everybody, and welcome to yet another Bloomz, Babble Beyond, this wonderful monthly chat where we get a chance to find out in depth about our artists in the Bloomz group. And each month we have a different set of girls, maybe, and we also have a different topic. And to this month's topic is just the word process. That can mean a lot of things to an artist, the process.
I just want to say, I think we have a different set of artists, not a different set of girls.
I know, sorry. I was thinking that. It's just, I'm of a certain age. I'm sorry. It's because,
just saying, you know.
You've been unusually PC this morning.
Yeah.
The reason is because, of course, I call you all my Bloomz girls. Because when we do the Bloomz show, which we'll be talking about next month, you're my Bloomz girls. So apologies if I've offended anybody. But I'm too old to change.
Yes, Bosley. Yeah.
Too old to change. Yes, so welcome everybody. Welcome this morning, this evening, if you're in Australia, like Cindy is over there in Oz. Yeah. Process. So this means a lot to us, doesn't it? When we're starting our art, the process which we go through, and that varies, I'm sure. Who wants to kick us off with their process this morning?
I'll go. Okay, so probably some of you already know that I'm mainly a landscape artist and just inspired by the beauty of nature around me and also the state of the planet, and wanting to try and, you know, do anything I can to help with the environment. And if my paintings can help raise awareness of the beauty of this planet and what we stand to lose, then that's great with me. So, sorry, excuse me. My process is mainly getting inspiration from the areas where I live, where I walk, where, you know, walking through forests in particular. But it doesn't have to be woods. It can be mountains, coasts, and just the beauty that surrounds us. And that's what inspires me to start the process, which then is, how do I try and translate what I'm seeing, hearing, smelling into a painting on canvas using my oils and painting knives, generally speaking. So that's the start of the process. It's, you know, if I could have sound and smello paint as well, that would be great, because people can then hear and see and smell, you know, my experience, but I've got to try and convey that in the paint alone. And so, yeah, once I've established what I want to work on, I do a few little thumbnail sketches, just checking out how I want to do the composition. I may want to crop an image or, you know, move things around a bit. You know, artistic license is great. We can add things in, leave things out, move things about, you know, much easier than in Photoshop. We just do it with our paint. And then from there, I decide on the size and shape of canvas, which for me generally these days is square. I do like a square canvas. It just really suits what I do. And then comes the decision of which colours I need to use. So I like to use a limited palette to keep a colour harmony within the painting. So normally...
But Fiona, when you're picking your colours and everything, are you still in that emotion that you felt when you were out there, when you got your inspiration? Or at that point, are you doing that, nope, this is the technical part, what colours am I going to bring in? How are you feeling at that?
It's part emotion and part technical, because I need to convey what I felt about that scene, but I also need to choose the colours that will help me to do that, which doesn't necessarily have to be the same colours as in nature itself. You know, there was one painting I did with a fairly pale orange sky, which it wasn't in reality, but it just suited the painting and gave the right atmosphere. So it's partly emotion and it's partly technical, because this is how I want it to look. What colours will help me to achieve that? Like you with your pride, the lion, you know, the colours that you put into the mane just to give that effect. You know, so it's a similar thing. And then with the knife painting, just going through really quickly here, I tend to start from things in the background and work forward. So if there's sky in the painting, I'll work from the sky first, generally speaking, and work forward to the foreground. So until it comes to a point where I think I've said everything I need to. If I work on it now, I'm just fussing and fiddling with it. Stop, learn to walk away.
Isn't that the most difficult thing, isn't it? Stopping.
It's knowing when to stop and hoping that you don't think, I wish I'd stopped 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
But that does get easier over time, but it is still, I think if you're determined to do your best work, it's always going to be a question that you will ask yourself: is this the right time to stop? Yes or no? And yeah, hopefully the answer is yes.
Does your process change whether you're painting out in nature, actually with your canvas and your easel in nature, to when you're back in the studio? Because in your studio, you've got all the other paraphernalia around you, where you can't take all of that out into the woodland or the landscape scene you're doing. So how does your process change between a live paint, as I would call it, and one that you're taking photos of?
Well, it basically doesn't change a lot in that I still use the same techniques, the same equipment. I will, if I'm going out, I'll take a very limited palette, but so that normally includes a warm and a cool red, a warm and a cool yellow, and the same with blue, maybe an earth colour or two, and obviously a lot of white. Being an oil painter, we use quite a lot of white, as in acrylics as well. So, and of course, I would normally work smaller when I'm outside, because just practicalities of transporting big wet paint canvases.
Thought about that.
But in essence, it's the same process: seeing what's there, seeing what bit of the landscape I want to concentrate on. I can't include everything. There's just too much. You certainly don't. Well, I certainly don't want to include every leaf. I tend to try and be a bit more, a bit freer and more interpretive, rather than being photorealistic. Definitely not like that. So it does tend to be the same process, just maybe I say more. I don't take all of my colours with me, but the colours that I do take, it's possible to mix virtually any colour with them anyway. So
does your artistic license still remain the same? Because when you're back in the studio with a photograph, you said you actually maybe use a bit of artistic license to change things. So, but when you're out there actually looking at it, do you feel a bit concerned about changing from what you see put on the canvas?
No, it's the same consideration, really, because I'm trying to create a painting that gives the impression of how I felt about that scene and what that scene says, to the viewer. Which, if there's a trash bin somewhere, I don't maybe want that trash bin in the front. It's good that they have them so that people can hopefully keep these places neat and tidy and not leave rubbish around, which affects animals, wildlife, and everything else. But I don't necessarily want that in my painting. So it's the same considerations whether I'm in front of the subject or working from sketches and photographs at home, really. And in fact, some paintings I actually do completely from memory, just evoking the feelings in my head of what it was like. And that may involve actually several places, because it's the feeling of being in that sort of place, like the Lake District in the country, beautiful scenery, and high moorlands and things like that. But I may not base it on just one place that I remembered, and then it will start one way, but it may go off in a slightly different direction as the painting progresses, because I think, would really, this would really enhance it and give more of the impression I want to create. So, it can change. And that can happen with a painting done from sketches or on site as well, just making the painting work as a painting. If I just want to replicate that scene, a photograph does it. But that's not what I'm trying to do.
Go with the flow, as it were.
Yeah.
Go with the flow.
Cindy, you paint with acrylics, don't you, mainly, and watercolours. Does any of Fiona's process resonate with you as to how or is yours totally different?
The part where she said about using lots of white. That's very true when I'm doing my acrylic paintings, definitely. Apart from that, no, because I use brushes pretty much for absolutely everything. I can paint with knives, and I have done few paintings with knives, nowhere near to the level that Fiona does, because she uses them all the time and I've only dabbled. Yeah, that's probably about the only bit that is really the same.
You use colour very interpretively with your animal painting.
I do.
As well. So you're thinking about colours and what you want to say, aren't you, as well?
Yeah. Yeah, but my process is quite different. I do not paint on location. I don't like it. I don't do it. When I'm out looking for my inspiration and everything, I actually much prefer to be in that moment with the animals. I'm an animal artist, if people don't already realise. I actually prefer to be in that moment and connect with the animals. And absorb all that in. So I will take photographs for reference that I'll then use when I get back to the studio.
I've just heard a little animal, I think.
You did.
Yeah.
Say hello, Henry.
Oh, Henry.
Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, he's going to stick his ears up. I then use the photographs to actually do the paintings when I come back. But normally, whether it be out on location or when I'm revisiting the photos when I come home into the studio, that's when I'll get the sense of whether I see that animal in a particular colour, like an aura colour, or whether I see that animal just as its natural colours. And I paint them in both ways, just depending on what comes to me at the time.
And that's because a lot of that is down to the fact that you also guide people into finding what the spirit animal is. So there's a great...
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I am finding now that my process, pretty much all the paintings I've been doing recently all have light code messages in them. The more I'm relying on my intuition and my connection, the more that's coming through. So I'm just now like putting them all over my paintings. And my last couple, I've even started to become more bold with putting those codes on. Like previously, I've put them there, but I've done it really subtly so that it was still the painting. And you didn't really see them unless I sort of pointed them out and let people know where they were and stuff like that. My last couple, they're a lot bolder.
Can you explain what they are then, Cindy, just in case I'm just not sure what you mean?
Light codes. This is always a difficult one for me to explain, but light codes, light language is the language of our souls, like it's our universal soul language. And light codes is one way of communicating that. Some people do it through voice, through sound or singing or different sound communications. Some people do it through movement as well. I see it in actual codes that look like funny little squiggles and shapes and all sorts of things like that. And if we look at it from our human eyes, it looks like a whole lot of squiggly nothingness. But if we look at it and absorb it in through our heart, just sense it, let our soul be the one to read it, it understands the exact message and take that message.
I think in my mind, I think of it as it's a vibration rather than an actual physical thing, isn't it? Yeah.
That's a good way to put it across, Steph. Yep.
There are quite a few layers to your work then, isn't there? Not just the physical paint layers. There's actually sort of other layers that people can, as they become more enlightened, can see more into your work.
Well, basically, it doesn't really matter what people's beliefs are or anything either. These vibrations, like Steph put it, because I really like that word, that's going to go out to them when they look at it anyway, regardless whether they realize it or not. The message is coming across. That's just how it works, which is why I love it so much. It's an amazing way to spread high vibration, good energy out to the world. Even more than just pretty pictures on canvas and paper.
Of course, if anybody wants to see your actual art painting process, it's all over your social media, isn't it? These wonderful time lapses. They're mesmerizing. It must take you hours and hours to do those.
Yeah, I basically now have got myself, it comes back from the days when I was doing a lot of work for different paint companies and things like that. So to promote the products that they were wanting you to promote, you had to film everything. So I've just now got into that habit. So regardless of what I'm painting, when I'm painting, I film it.
Just
and if I've got all that film, why not share it with the world and let people have a sneaky look at what I do and how I do it? And
hopefully my new studio will have some sort of a setup like that, Cindy, because it was you saying you have lights on the ceiling, don't you? And
yep, I've got lights on my ceiling. I've got a camera mounted from the ceiling. I've got all of that.
Love it.
Because I always look at when you're doing these time lapse and wonder why you start where you do on the. See, because sometimes it isn't obvious that you're going to start there. I thought, well, I might have done that the wrong way around. The different way. But I suppose this is just the way that you build up the process of building up the painting, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's never exactly the same for me either. Basically, nowadays, when I actually come to doing the paintings, by that stage, after going out and connecting with the animal and so forth, I just do whatever comes through and in whatever order it comes through. Which, sometimes I'll paint a background first, but like Fiona says, she always starts from the back and moves forward. I don't always do that because sometimes that's not the way it comes through to me. I just follow with what comes. If I was back in my logical, technical way of learning to do things, I would do what Fiona does and start from the back and work to the foreground, because that's the way we are taught. That's the technique, like with pretty much any of the ways that you're taught to paint. But it doesn't necessarily come through to me like that anymore. So I just go with the flow pretty much.
You always finish with the eyes like Steph does with her pieces that she creates?
No, probably more the whiskers on my animals. Tends to be the very last thing. I might do them partway through or little bits of them partway through, but the final highlights and everything on the whiskers is usually the last.
I mean, with my eyes, it's only the final little white dot that
highlight.
I put in last.
Yeah, I was going to say the white highlight was probably the step before the whiskers.
We might as well talk to you now because you're a fibre sculptor. You're we always call you the fibre alchemist. So
someone's knocking on the front door.
Go away. 1,000 packages. I think they've got. So you're a fibre sculptor. So
yes,
talking about 3D now, aren't we? Not 2D.
Yeah.
So your process, I'm not going to comment here because I've seen your process for so long that I could go now and I could talk you through it. But tell us about your process of starting off from.
This person is banging on the front door. They obviously need a signature, babe.
I'll go.
You go. I'll carry on talking.
It's live, folks.
So I shall carry on anyway. So my process starts from a feeling as well, and I unfortunately don't get a chance to actually see a lot of the animals in person. Although if I am doing a particular animal and I know that there is one in a local zoo or wildlife park, then I will specifically go and visit them so that you can, because you get much more of a feeling. I mean, great thing now, there's a load of videos, aren't there, on YouTube and stuff. So at least I can see the movement and things like that, because that makes a whole, but to actually be with the animal. And in fact, my recent one that I've been putting up, which is of my elephant, I was really lucky enough to be in Kenya about 20 years ago and saw this big bull elephant and its baby. And that's what inspired that. It was that feeling of that protection, but also play, you know, that area under Big Dad that he's running around and charging around. But trust me, you go near that. And that was what we experienced, that we were in our little Jeep with our safari guide, and the little one ran across the road, and Dad thought we were going to get between him and his baby. Oh, I love it. I just love that whole feeling. I was trying to get that essence when I built, but then I have to go back to basics for me, because I'm 3D, and I download all the skeletons and all of the muscle groups and everything. And I love that bit, because whilst it's technical, because I'm producing a wire skeleton and I'm wrapping around, I'm really getting to know that creation whilst I'm doing it. And I think it was Sammy who said once, where she said, you're entwining your DNA and yourself in the piece whilst you're actually creating it. And it really does feel like that. So that then when I get to what I call the pretty bit, which is put in the top layer and the colors and everything else, that's really playful. And by the time I come to the end, I've had a whole relationship with this creation. And because people say, how could you bear to then sell the piece? And you think, no, because I've had this fabulous relationship with this piece. And now it's for someone else to have a new, completely different relationship with it. And I'm really happy to say goodbye in that sense. So, but yeah, it's a whole process. I mean, there are times I stop halfway through because I've lost the inspiration, and I've done that with pieces, and they get put aside and they get finished later. It's all about having the feeling and going on with it. But yeah, a mixture of having the emotional side, but as well as, obviously, like all of us, there's techniques that we need to, which we don't necessarily follow exactly how we were taught, but they are still techniques nevertheless that we're actually following.
That's the thing about art, isn't it? In general, it is a duality of the technical bit that you've got to get right for the paint to be applied right onto the canvas, or the wool to be applied right onto your skeleton. And then there's the emotional, the inside, the heart bit that you can't reproduce the same for every piece. It just depends.
No, and also I think also with regards to like the technical, you learn how to do something, and then you learn how you want to do it. So you then like almost like take it apart, or you change it, and that's fun, isn't it? Because you go, right, I know how to do it now. Well, you know, enough. I know how to do it enough. I can go and do whatever, you know, an experimentation. And it's usually mistakes, isn't it? Where you find something that you go, oh, that's interesting.
Yes,
yeah.
It's we learn the rules, and then we learn how to break the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that's fun. And we don't do it just to be different. We do it because it's fun, and how else can you express what you've really got inside if you don't really get involved? And love all that.
Does your process change, Steph, when you do a commission for somebody? Because it's not something that you decided to do. It's something that someone said,
no,
do this.
It changes, as in, I've got no idea how long it's going to take. Because someone will say, I mean, first of all, I have to accept the commissions, because if someone came along with something, I don't know, it's never happened, but if someone came along with something you think, I really don't have a feeling for this, I just don't think I'm going to be able to do it, I would say no. But more often than not, people so far have asked me to do their pets, as opposed to, my God, it's like Piccadilly Station in this place at the moment.
It's like
Tooting Station. It's just like Tooting Station. And people more often than not ask me to do their pets. But I have had people sort of say, oh, there's this particular animal, can you produce that? And that will be different, because someone has obviously thought it could be extinct or something which is quite endangered, and could you do a version of this for me? So then they're going to describe to me want that done. But it's different when it's someone's pet, because it's how they feel for that pet and their emotion and how they see that pet is going to be completely different to the way I do. So I have to really understand their relationship with that pet. And I know we always use Milo, the dog creation that I did, the Jack Russell, as an example. But I really they'd lost him and it was like their child. And I really understood that. And once I got that, I could do it. But then it's such a huge pressure to get that, because when you're doing a piece that you're emotional about, you get there and you do it and you do or you don't. But this is somebody else's feeling, and it means a lot to them, and which at the end of the day gives you huge, beautiful bonus when they actually accept the piece and usually cry or
Go in the front door again.
Emotion. Okay, darling. Yeah. Oh dear. Excellent. I love it. There's always something on these videos, isn't it? We either get the video bit looking right, and now we've got permanent interruptions, but there you go. It's live.
Busy day at your house.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was going to say, we'll talk about experimentation. Mac, I mean, experimentation is almost like everything that you do, isn't it, in your pieces? And I mean, recently where you were bringing in lots of different materials and things like that, it's kind of, what you do.
I think it's Mac's middle name.
Yeah, I love experimentation, because that kind of, when you're doing technique and learning technique, there's a way to do it correct, or you're making a mistake. And I hate that kind of, it's kind of like control, and I feel like I want to break out of the control. Although understanding the technique, which I really appreciate, and I also do three-dimensional work mostly, but not always. Then you need to understand about materials and weight and gravity, and I've experimented with lots of things, so I have a good understanding of that and can do more experiments. But so either my pieces are experimental, in fact they're all experimental, because I never know what they're going to look like in the end. Sometimes my process is that sometimes I can get a complete vision of something, and all I need to do is create it. And it's good to do that now and again, just to see if you can. And then you think, oh God, I hope I don't get too many of those, because they're boring.
Your process can take a long time. Some of your pieces, Mac, they take ages to come to fruition. And isn't there one that you're still working on now after a few years?
Oh yes. And I've got several pieces that the work I'm doing now. We were talking about experimenting before you came in, Steve. So sometimes it's the whole piece, and sometimes when I'm like, I'm not quite sure what to do one day, and I'll just kind of, I use a lot of chewed gum at the moment, and have been for a few years, and I will chew a piece of gum, and when you first chew it, it's very, very sticky, and you can use it like that, and I have played around with that, experimented, but playing really. Or you can put it on a surface that is easy to take off after a few days, depending on the ambient temperature and the batch of chewing gum, because it does vary. And then sometimes I go, I wonder what would happen if, and I just kind of follow that through and just see what happens. But as you said, Steve, when I'm doing that, it can take a long time, because with chewing gum, you can only chew, well, it's in my best interest to only chew one packet a day. because it has a laxative in them.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it could be.
Yeah, slight little side effects there.
What
Mhm.
to-
Exactly. So you kind of, yes. So it's, very, very slow. But in the process, my imagination came up with, it could go here or could go there. And if I did that, I would need to support it with this. And how would I do that? And all the rest of it. And then sometimes I'm just kind of doing it as if some people, when they're doing knitting, they can knit and watch the television. And sometimes it's very much that. It goes on in the background, unconscious, haven't a clue what I'm doing. Sometimes things will come through, like the chakra ball that I'm creating, and it takes a while. Every time you do a layer, you have to leave it until it becomes solidified before you can do the next layer. That you can be thinking about it now. How do I want it? What do I want this to convey? Do I really want it that way? How could that change? Just exploring, really, just seeing what happens and keeping myself motivated, because as you say, there's one that's taken over 3 years to complete. And it's like, okay, so sometimes I literally have to leave it a while for it to strengthen, but also I need to leave it to a while until I kind of go, I wonder what this looks like, and get another idea, get motivated again, because I think most of you have felt that there needs to be a feeling, there needs to be some connection with what you're doing. And that's what I feel with me as well. Sometimes I have to put things on the shelf, metaphorically, to just leave it there, let it be, and then come back to it. And even some pieces, when I think they're finished, I will get
No.
No.
6 months later.
Finished.
6 months. Sorry?
You don't get that feeling that we all have as artists. That's finished now. You have to wait till that feeling comes. Or does it never come?
Well, sometimes I think it's finished.
Yeah.
And then put it this way, I've started doing pieces. My earlier pieces were done before I started really exploring my spiritual side. But as I've been doing my spiritual side, and I've re-looked at these pieces, I've gone, they're not finished. You need to add something. And it usually either is crystals or pearls, or just exploring that for every piece of chewing gum that I chew, because of my saliva, it actually contains crystals. So that means that I can actually attune it to a particular frequency, or like as Cindy said, it's a way for our souls to receive the information that I'm going to convey in this piece of work, whether it's through Reiki or some other form of yes. I do not know.
What I'm getting from this, what I'm getting from this is that your pieces are evolving as you evolve spiritually.
Yes, basically. Yeah.
Is that you talked about you evolving with the Reiki and the spiritual side, and the pieces that you thought were finished, you're now adding to because they're evolving as well.
Yes, that's basically it. It is. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that very clearly for me.
Very interesting. Yeah. Another thing that came up, I was thinking then is there any way that you could speed up the process with drying it, or is that not something you would want to do because of this evolution?
Well, how would you dry it? Because if you apply
maybe just
hair dryer.
Would a hairdryer not dry the gum quicker?
Oven.
Yeah.
No, it makes it stickier.
Oh, does it?
It melts literally because it's plastic.
So really is a question of the time it takes. The time it takes.
Time it takes.
But in that time, other things are happening to you, and then they're reflected eventually in your pieces. So what I'm saying now is that some of your pieces may never ever be finished because we're evolving, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
I mean, there will come a time when I'll need to say, "Oh, come on, that's enough's enough. Come on, hey, just leave it off. Come on."
You can't fit in the house, it's so big. Yeah.
I know. My house is lit with boxes and stuff and materials.
Elisa, let's talk to Elisa now, because I've always been fascinated in your work, Elisa, because you paint the female soul into your work. So your process must be quite amazing, how you start to how you get that wonderful result. And we know that, Steph and I know, because I commissioned you to do a wonderful geisha for Steph. And I was part of the process in that we had communication, unbeknown to Steph, while you were doing it. And the whole process was, to me, a part of the art that we received.
I do my best. Yes, I want to start from commissions because I want to make you laugh. Basically, when you deal with people, their greatest problem is that they want to appear beautiful. And
Yes.
they ask for a portrait. They want to be painted, in the moment of the brightest glory. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a legacy that they want for themselves or for someone else, and that is the point where we can have problems because I think that really the beauty of people is not only in the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had experiences in the past when I was criticized as I was producing a piece of art from this client that she said, okay, I don't want wrinkles. Okay. So wipe them away. I was working with charcoal, and she said, no, not the wrinkles, because I want to be young. So like this, like a lifting of the face. And so, yeah, because people are quite, I think unsure of themselves, and they want to stay attached to the physical appearance. And even if try to make them understand that the real beauty is somewhere else, it's very hard because they feel unsure. And the canonical key for the interpretation of a person for them is the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard to jump to the higher level of communication. But once you find the door that is open, then the process goes smooth, and they really find sort of harmony with you as you try to investigate their interiority. In the past few years, I had set up a sort of approach based on archetypes. Jungian archetypes, to be precise, related to Greek goddesses of ancient mythology, which is the mythology that I know, because it is Western country based. I don't know anything about Eastern mythology, so I used what I knew. And it was very, very interesting to see that people could really identify themselves with one or more archetypes, because it's common that we are at just that position of 2 or even 3 archetypes and type of women. And then you see that the portrait that you are commissioned by with has a meaning, because you have the symbols, you have the message, and you have the physical appearance. And then it's a mix, and it's a magic that I try to build, and the results are quite unexpected sometimes, because they discover that they are not only beautiful on the physical point of view, but in the soul, which is the real goal of the commission. And when I work by myself, it's easier because I don't have to fight against anyone but myself. So I take my time, basically, and sometimes I start with an idea. So I see, an image that can hit me, or I read a sentence or a poem or really a dream, and I have this idea in my head, and I don't want to tell anything about this, but maybe this idea will keep me on the momentum of painting, because when you are out of the flow, it's always difficult to come back when you are in the rush of the daily routine. And so when you get an inspiration, the process is all there. So you have to be, quick enough and go straight to the easel and try to give a shape to that idea. So process can be slow. I'm quite a slow painter, really. I don't make long painting sessions because I feel that I am emotionally drained when I stay too much in front of the easel. And so it can take a little bit longer to get to the end of a piece. But when I have the momentum, then I find the time to stay there, and I proceed quite quickly. So it depends. But
there's an awful lot of emotion when you look at one of the paintings. Just lately,
connection.
We're putting together all of the artwork for the Bloomz show that we'll talk about next month. But whenever I look at your work, I mean, everybody interprets a piece of artwork in a different way. But sometimes what comes over in yours can be quite sad, because you're looking at a female and you don't know what she's thinking. You can only interpret what we thought that you were thinking. So it's lovely to look, and you find yourself wandering off in your head as to what that person was going through at the time that the painting was done. So that's you really have a knack, a talent of capturing that at that moment, that one moment in time. It may be a little glance, a look, but it's something from the inside that you're bringing out.
I think that what you say is so true, that I think that I am the greatest testimonial of myself. because some of my pieces, by the title you can have suggestions, but you have no idea of the message until you ask me to be explicit, maybe. And that can be quite a good point of connection between me and the potential buyer, because then you discover the story and the origin of the thing that made me think such a piece. And it's like an onion, you can peel it off the first layer and then the second, then you never look at the same thing. It's always new.
And do you prefer doing artwork of your own thoughts, or do you like commissions from people? Do you like people coming and saying, "Can you do one of me?" Do you prefer that, or do you prefer your own compositions?
Really, at the moment, I'm not looking for commissions. But if someone who inspires me asks me, I won't say no, but I will follow really my intuition. My intuition, because I would love to avoid the misunderstanding of a portrait which is based on just the physical appearance. But as a premise now, it's easier for me. I have experience now. At the beginning, I was what I have to do was quite all unexpected. So now I'm stronger.
You've evolved as well. No, I think
again, evolving.
Yeah,
once
it
again.
is difficult, as you said at the start of a conversation about you. Then was that people that commission work from you have got to understand that you're painting more than just that facade on the outside. And that can not sit with some people.
And that's exciting. I mean, to me, that's really, really exciting, isn't it? And so you can probably work out quite early on when someone comes to you, Elisa, and asks you to do that. If you only have to say, well, I'm not just actually going to paint the physical, I'm going to if they're scared and can't connect with that, you immediately go, well, that's not going to work then, because someone's got to want that, haven't they, for that process to work. So, yeah.
Thanks, Steph, because your words are better than mine.
No, I love listening to you. It's one of the things sitting here I love is that with all of us, with all our nationalities and all our cultures and all our different ways. It's fabulous to just see everybody in their different expressions. I love hearing you speak.
That just leaves me then.
Yeah, just you.
My process is very, very different to everybody because, of course, I'm 3D. I make lamps, as you all know, out of galvanized iron and brass pipe fittings. And my process tends to be, from a technical point of view, it has to be the same for every lamp that I do because of the safety involved. So when I get the pieces for my lamp, they're not all lovely and shiny and clean. They're filthy dirty. They're covered in grease from the plumbers merchants because they're meant to go underground or in a wall or somewhere. So they're not have to be clean. I have to then clean them all up. The process of getting a file inside to make sure there's no sharp edges. So all that process is a given. I have to do that each time. But the time that my process varies is with the character that I am making with the lamp. So I do a lot of character lamps now. I used to do just general lamps out of all sorts of fittings, and it didn't have to be anything particular, although they did develop into something. Now I'm more specific. Over the years, I've become more specific about what I do. So I tend to do characters, or not only characters, but characters that people will know because they're famous sports people, they're famous musicians, that sort of thing. Or it could be a commission where, yes, I do commissions, by the way. It could be
your middle name. That's your middle name.
Middle name is commission. I love doing commissions because someone will send me a photograph, maybe of their father, I don't know, playing cricket or something from the 1950s in a particular pose, and I have to reproduce that in a lamp form. Now, like Steph said with her commissions, if you get one like that, it is a question of how do I, out of pipe fittings, produce something that is going to instantly make them react. Oh, yeah, that's Dad playing cricket. And it's all in the tiny details. With me, the process is finding that little extra turn in the arm so it matches the photograph. And it's amazing how just a couple of degrees extra turn in the body, it's getting movement into a very inanimate object, such as pipe fittings. It's trying to convey some movement. And that's a part of the process that I probably love more than anything. And Steph is one of my greatest critics because I can say to her, I finished this, looks okay, doesn't it? Now, when an artist say to somebody else, this looks okay, doesn't it? You know the answer. You already know the answer. You've just come for me to actually go, no. And he'll go, oh, and you think, but you knew that. That's why you came in and showed it. That's the good thing is that. And then you go back and sometimes I have to completely revisit the whole build. I mean, it always starts off, my stuff always starts off with what I call a first fit, which is I roughly screw everything together and see in general, is this going to work? Now, if it's an idea that I've had because I've been listening to the radio or seen something on telly or it's something that's in the news, whatever, oh, yeah, that'll be great. And sometimes, as we all know, this doesn't always relate to what you finish up with. What you think is going to be easy in your head, when you start to put it together, you think, no, this isn't going to work. Sometimes I can spend hours and hours thinking that I'm going to get a finished lamp that looks fabulous. And when I've got it, I think, that's absolute rubbish. I'll take it to bits and I'll either revisit it or I'll say, that was an idea that just isn't going to work. But the commissions are different because you have to make it work. And so far, touch wood, there's not been a commission that I haven't been able to do. Probably one of the most challenging was the builder. Someone wanted me to do a commission of this guy who owned a construction company whose staff never believed really that he actually laid a brick in his life, but he did. He was a very competent bricklayer. I had to do a lamp of him laying bricks. Now, the easiest thing would have been to have gone on and bought a little tiny trowel, a little tiny spirit level. You can get little plastic ones and Lego bricks, but not me. My worst problem is myself in that I need to go that extra little bit of detail. So I bought a little mold and I made 100 and some odd little tiny clay bricks, which I then glued together to make a little wall. I made a trowel out of a piece of metal that I'd cut, and it was just tiny like that. And to me, the end result was lovely, and he absolutely loved it. And I think you know when you have to go that extra little bit rather than just go the easy route. Because you start.
One thing I'm going to, because you've got into your detail, and I'm going to take you back to the bit where you actually said at the start that, oh yeah, because I get these stuff and I have to wash them, and you know that's just that part of it. But I think your process starts because sometimes you do draw out something, you order the pieces because you know you haven't got them all, but you actually arrive with a tray of things which you don't just throw in a vat of something which cleans it, you hand clean them. And in the same way that we're picking out things and putting our DNA on stuff, you are, because whilst you're doing it, you're thinking about what you're going to be doing with those things. I mean, you haven't just bought bits out of a shop and gone, right, okay, that's gonna, so you'll produce it and then you're actually categorizing them all. And then when you bring them all together, you know, there's still a part of you spread on all of that.
Oh yeah, because now it's soon, when I started to make my lamps into actual people or animals, maybe cats and dogs are the main animals I do, I now don't see a corner piece like that as a 90-degree pipe elbow. It is a shoulder or it's a knee, and every piece I see now I see part of the body, which is quite weird in a way, but to me it's natural. And I do spend hours in the sink with the soapy water, cleaning with a scourer, all of the off. And that time that I spend doing that is a very important part of my process. And it's not until we have discussions like this, and Steph just brought that up, that you realise how much of an important part of the process that actually is. Because it starts then, it doesn't start with me in the workshop when I'm screwing them together. It starts with actually the handling them and washing them off. And when I've got to the end of a piece, I can remember every piece that I have put on there and any trials and tribulations I had whilst I was doing it. I'm trying to get Jimi Hendrix's arm a little bit further round, and you've got to the end of the thread and you have to just try and force it around a little bit more. And when I see the final piece, every time I look at the various areas of the lamp, I can remember when that worked and the elation that gave me when that actually worked, when I turned it on and the actual touch sensor switch worked. You know, I do touch sensor switches in my lamp, so you can touch anywhere on the lamp and it comes on, and you don't know until you actually finish it if that's going to actually work. Especially when you paint a lamp, of course. With me, part of the process is deciding where the switch is going to go, and mostly now people want touch sensor lamps. And of course, they also maybe want them painted. If I'm doing a footballer, I have to paint it with the team's colours. Or if I'm doing a person of colour, it will be this lovely black gold that I use. But of course, the choice of paints to me is important. And also the paints that I use are from a company called Culture Hustle. And their paints have all got tiny elements of metal within them, which is brilliant for me because they're touch sensor through the paint. And that was a great revelation. Up until I started using this, I was having to leave a little area on the lamp free of paint people could touch. But with this paint, I can. So I think my process is evolving. But as with all of us, as is proved this morning, it's the enthusiasm we have for our process. It's the joy we get from doing it that is all part of the finished piece of art. It's not just putting a piece of art on canvas.
And we're also a part of each other's evolution as well, though, aren't we? Because we learn from each other's and we're involved in it. And it's it's a delight. I mean, I would say to anybody...
I think
absolutely.
People that are watching this and are what I would call lone artists, if you ever get a chance of
find a group.
Part of a group, because it needs to be a group that's as eclectic as the Bloomz group here, because we have so many different artists, all with very different skills. But it's amazing how many of those skills overlap. I don't mean the technical skills, the mental skills that we've got in encouraging each other to produce better work and being there as support when things don't go wrong. Not just in our art life, but in personal lives as well. I mean, when you've got a group of people that are so connected by the desire to produce wonderful art that has got meaning.
It's an emotional connection, isn't it?
Emotional connection. People have built that up. So if you're watching this, listening to this on the podcast, and you think, yeah, I need to join an art group, find an art group to join. Go on to Facebook groups, and you will find the right one. It will, it's not, groups aren't for everybody. You'll find a group not really getting much from this, but eventually you will find people maybe within the group that you can say to them, look, let's form our own group. And because we gel together, and that's what happened with the Bloomz. So I think that brings us to a natural conclusion to this wonderful chat about our process. As you can see, 6 of us here, 6 very, very different art processes. Which we'll all go away and we'll think we've all learned something. I learned a bit more about Mac's work today, about why she never finishes a piece. Because it's never finished. I've learned never to ask Elisa to paint my soul because it would be so black. No. But thank you very much for joining me
I'm asking
today.
a commission for you. I'm asking.
Next,
I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
really? Okay.
Bless you.
Next month, we're going to be chatting about the great big event that we have coming up at the end of April, which is the Bloomz International Online Art Show. You'll be hearing a lot more about that on your social media coming up in the next few weeks. But we'll have a little get-together the Friday before the show. So shortly after then, this will be online for you to watch, and it'll be talking about the show, giving you a heads up as to what you can get out of this amazing live art show that we do at the end of April each year. So look out for that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, ladies, not girls, ladies, for joining us.
And Henry.
Thank you.
And Henry.
And Henry, of course, over there. Oh, right, not that way, isn't it, Henry?
Yeah.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Henry. Look after yourselves, everybody, and we'll see you all next time on the Bloomz Babble and Beyond. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.